The Big Brain Book, an alphabetical guide to knowledge.
History. If you don't know history, then you don't know anything. You are a leaf that doesn't know it is part of a tree. Michael Crichton. What is history? Throughout the ages, history has been written by the conquerors of lands and cultures, one version very different from another. Oral history was relied upon by the Vikings, and even today the Aboriginal tribes of Australia use song and dance to tell their histories. As writing systems developed in ancient cultures, the written word allowed versions of the past to be recorded for future generations to remember their ancestral past and to pass the story on. A. Aborigine. An indigenous people of Australia that has developed into a rich culture of rituals and varied customs, despite a horrible past. The Aboriginal word for land is country. This means the land, sea, and mountains, together as a whole, create the country. The tribe's ritual body painting is considered sacred. Only traditional symbols are used to represent the spirits of ancestors. Each symbol has a unique meaning and cannot be changed. They represent a variety of things, from family status, tribe, or ancestry, and must always be applied by another person. B. Beringia. During the last ice age, a large amount of Earth's water was frozen in ice sheets 2 miles thick over North America. People and animals, like the woolly mammoth, walked across an ancient land bridge, Beringia, that connected Asia to North America. This was a slow, unintended migration that happened over thousands of years. That bridge is now submerged underwater after those ice sheets were hit by a comet around 12,800 years ago. The melted ice water flooded the American West with giant icebergs and boulders. This led to the world's ocean levels rising over 400 feet around the globe. Many ancient civilizations living on the coastlines at that time were submerged and destroyed. C. Carnacs. The ancient Celts lived in Western Europe between the years 300 BC and 200 AD. They lived in groups called clans, and each one had its own chieftain. They would fight not only their neighboring enemy, but also each other. The Carnacs was a 12-foot-long brass musical instrument used during war to cause fear in the enemy. If a warrior were to die in battle, he would have items such as his clothing and jewelry, his sword, and even food and wine buried with him to have on his journey into the afterlife. D. Druid. In ancient Celtic societies, Druids, usually men, were high-ranking priests. Druid priestesses were called Bandarai, and they were the guardians of a sacred practice that involved a deep relationship with the natural world. They revered the Mother Earth, celebrated the 4 seasons, and upheld the belief that the divine manifested all throughout nature. They were teachers of knowledge, scientists, and tribal storytellers. They were looked upon to be expert spiritual advisors. As the Roman Empire and Christianity were spreading across Europe, the Druids were persecuted for their beliefs and forced into seclusion. Druid is an ancient term meaning, they who know the oak. A. Egyptian hieroglyphs. Hieroglyphs were a form of writing used by the ancient Egyptians. They were written and painted on papyrus, but were also carved into stone on tombs, temple walls, and everyday use items like water vessels. Over time, as Egypt was conquered by civilizations throughout history, the use of carved hieroglyphs evolved into a more standard form of writing. The discovery of the Rosetta Stone in 1799 by French soldiers, when Napoleon Bonaparte was invading Egypt, enabled the translation of hieroglyphic writings. F. Fascism. a misguided political ideology characterized by the use of media control through propaganda-censored messages. It is based on a dictatorial leader that suppresses the opposition by censoring their freedom of speech and banishing the personal liberties of individuals. Like socialism and Marxism, it has failed everywhere in the world it has been tried. Benito Mussolini used the word fascism in 1919 to describe his political movement. If citizens did not support Mussolini's ideas, his personal secret police force, the OVRA, would arrest people or, in some cases, kill them. Adolf Hitler had his own political soldiers to carry out his tyrannical beliefs. The SS was formed by Hitler in 1925. They became a powerful force within the Nazi Party and held power over the military and police force. After Germany loses World War II, the SS was declared a criminal organization in 1946. Simon Wiesenthal was a survivor of the Nazi concentration camps and eventually became a Nazi hunter, working to track down the SS officers who eventually fled to countries like South America to escape being held accountable for their war crimes. G. Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe is a Neolithic archaeological site located in Turkey. The site has many giant stone T-shaped pillars with relief carvings of humans and animals. The significance of the site is the out-of-place context in the human history timeline. It was intentionally buried by people of an ancient culture, so the exact age is unknown. It dates as far back as 13,000 to 11,500 years ago. This was before the end of the last glacial ice age that occurred in North America. Before Göbekli Tepe was discovered, it was believed that hunter-gatherers of that time were not sophisticated enough to be megalithic stone builders. This site indicates a civilization that far exceeds hunter-gatherer societies living in that area at that time. Hacha. Holocaust. The Holocaust refers to the genocide of European Jewish people during World War II. Between 1941 and 1945, Nazi Germany and its collaborators systematically murdered some 6 million Jewish individuals across German-occupied Europe, around 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population. In most camps, prisoners were stripped of their own civilian clothing and forced to wear a uniform. Typically, this uniform was patterned with blue stripes, although this wasn't always the case. Prisoners were sometimes forced to wear small triangles sewn onto their uniforms to show the reason for their incarceration. Different colors represented various groups in society. Blue triangles were for foreign forced laborers and emigrants. Purple triangles were for Jehovah's Witnesses. A black triangle would indicate people with disabilities. Inuit. Inuit, also known as Eskimos, is a plural noun of which the singular is Inuk, which means the people. It is the name for the people who occupy a territory stretching from the Chukchi Peninsula of Siberia to eastern Greenland. Historically, they have lived a nomadic life. They migrated with the animals across the land, expertly hunting and fishing for survival in harsh northern conditions. J. Jewish badge. The Jews of Europe were legally compelled to wear a Jewish badge at least as far back as the 13th century. This practice was continued throughout the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, and the 18th century. The Nazis then resurrected this practice as part of their persecutions during the Holocaust. It was done in a very systematic manner, as a prelude to deporting the Jews to ghettos and killing centers inside German-occupied Eastern Europe. Forcing the Jews to wear the badges was but one of many psychological tactics directed at labeling Jews as being less than human during the genocidal Nazi regime. K. Knights Templar. The Knights Templar was established in the year 1119 and given papal recognition in 1129. It was a Catholic medieval military order whose members combined martial skills with a monastic life to defend Christian holy sites and pilgrims in the Middle East and elsewhere. They also, according to some historians, were in possession of the Holy Grail. They wore white robes to signify their purity and eventually added the red cross of gules to their robes to represent the blood they had shed while defending the Holy Land. L. League of Nations. The League of Nations was an international diplomatic group formed after the end of World War I. It was a way to solve disputes between countries before they erupted into open warfare. It was founded January 10th in 1920 by the Paris Peace Conference, which ended the First World War. It was disbanded in 1946 after failing to stop the start of World War II. M. Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird began as an undercover CIA program in the late 1950s. The CIA paid journalists and major news media outlets to report on events in such a way that would influence and sway public opinion to their liking. Reporter Carl Bernstein brought this to the attention of the American people in an article published in 1977. After the Smith-Mundt Act laws were amended and modernized in 2013 by President Obama, the American government was allowed to subject its own citizens to domestic media propaganda. Many people still believe Operation Mockingbird is still in use today. Journalistic news media, the film and television industry, and social media recently have demonstrated during political elections the fabrication of particular narratives that favor certain candidates while disparaging and censoring their opponents. In 19th Amendment. The 19th Amendment legally guarantees American women the right to vote. It was legalized in 1920 after decades of protesting and organizing by a group called the National American Woman Suffrage Association. It was formed in 1890 by Alice Paul and Lucy Burns. For decades, they relentlessly protested the states on this issue. After World War I ended in 1918, they argued that if women could serve their country proudly during a time of war, they should be allowed the right to vote. After utilizing protests in front of the White House, which amendment one of the U.S. Bill of Rights allows its citizens to do, they could no longer be ignored. Soon after, President Woodrow Wilson proposed to amend the Constitution. Olympia. Olympia was an ancient Greek city that was the site of the first Olympic Games. Before the start of the Games, a priestess would light the Olympic flame. They would make offerings to Zeus and Hera. Women were not allowed to participate in or even watch the Games. The only woman who could watch the Games was the priestess of the Temple of Demeter in Olympia. Winners of the Games were crowned with an olive leaf wreath called kotinos. The olive leaves came from a sacred olive tree planted by the Greek god, Hercules. P. Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book was the code name for the systematic study of unidentified flying objects by the United States Air Force from March 1952 to its termination on December 17, 1969. The U.S. government has denied extraterrestrial activity despite receiving over 12,000 claims of unexplained sightings. Q. Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl, also known as Kukulkan, was an Aztec and Mayan creator god. According to legend, he came to the people after a global disaster had occurred. He taught them astronomy, great calendar systems, science, and most importantly, agriculture. These ancient people flourished across South America, which enabled them to create terra preta, a very fertile and dark soil that allowed farming of vast croplands all over the Amazon basin. His name means feathered serpent in Nahuatl, the Aztec language. He was depicted as a combination of the Quetzal bird and a serpent. The Chichen Itza pyramid in the Yucatan Peninsula honors Kukulkan with ancient Mayan architecture and an advanced society. R. Runes. A rune is a letter in a set of related alphabets known as runic alphabets, native to the Germanic people. Runes were used to write Germanic languages before they adopted the Latin alphabet. Runes were also used by Viking societies since they did not use paper, but instead carved the runic letters into wood and stone. Samurai. Samurai were a Japanese warrior caste of the area landlords known as daimyo. They served their masters with lethal martial skills in swordsmanship, but also archery and calligraphy. The word samurai is derived from the Japanese verb saburao, meaning to serve. The samurai sword is crafted through a process of heating the blade and folding it to create layers within, which gives the sword its incredible strength. The edge of the blade is hardened and sharpened before being polished. The handle is decorated with silk wrappings before being presented to the new owner. T. Trojan War. The Greeks defeat the Anatolians in the Trojan War, led by the king of Ithaca, Odysseus. The war began when a Trojan prince and the wife of an Anatolian general fell in love and escaped together. The war ended when Odysseus instructed his soldiers to build a huge wooden horse and leave it outside the gates of Troy for the Anatolians as an offering to their gods. The Greeks pretend to sail home, giving the impression of losing the battle. Soldiers hiding inside the horse open the gates to the city after the horse is brought inside the city walls. After a 10-year war, Greek soldiers finally conquer Troy and burn the city to the ground. United States. The United States is a country of 50 states covering a vast area of North America, with Alaska in the northwest and Hawaii extending the nation's presence into the Pacific Ocean. Americans, thanks to our forefathers, have a Bill of Rights that protects their freedom of speech, religion, and the right to peaceful assembly. The Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States gives its citizens a right to own personal firearms, being necessary to protect that First Amendment and from a government ruling against the will of the American people. Ratified in July of 1789, the people of the United States adopted the Constitution as the law of the land. It is the oldest written constitution in the world and provides certain freedoms and liberties that other countries do not possess. Vikings. The Vikings were traders, farmers, warriors, explorers, and great sea navigators from Nordic countries, which include Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden. Leif Erikson, the son of Eric the Red, became the first European to reach North America, nearly 500 years before Christopher Columbus arrived from Spain in 1492. The first European child to be born in the newly discovered world was the son of a man named Thorfinn and his wife Gudrid, and was given the name of Snorri. World War I. Over 30 nations declared war between 1914 and 1918. The majority sided and fought with the Allies, including Serbia, Russia, France, Britain, Italy, and the United States. They were opposed by Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire, together forming the Central Powers. Xenophon. Xenophon was a Greek military leader, philosopher, and historian. He is well known for his works that center on Socrates as well as for his historical writings, which focus on Sparta, Persian generals and kings, as well as horse and dog training. Yuan Dynasty. The Yuan dynasty was established by Kublai Khan when the Mongols ruled China in the 13th century. Kublai was the grandson of Genghis Khan, the Great, leader of the Mongol Empire. Mongol warrior horseback archers were so skilled that they are considered to be the most elite warriors ever to go into war on horseback. Hanging from the side of a running horse while accurately shooting arrows over the horse's neck earned them the feared name, the Devil's Horsemen. Zulu. Zulu hats, or asikalos, are traditionally worn only by the married Zulu tribeswomen of South Africa. The shape of the asikalo developed from the 19th century conical hairstyle that was worn as a sign of respect to a woman's husband and his family. In addition to that, it also served as a public symbol of a woman's married status.